Welcome to the 2-month review, the weekly podcast brought to you by Open Letter and 3%. We take one book and break it down bit by bit, section by section, talk about it, analyze it, make jokes, have a good time. I am Chad Post from Open Letter Book, and right now we are talking about 4x4 by Sarah Mesa, translated by Katie Whittemore, who is our special guest this week. Hey, Katie.
Hello.
Also, Brian Wood. Brian Wood is here.
Hi, Chad. Great introduction. You did a wonderful job as always.
What do you do again? Why are you here?
I'm just here to talk about some translated literature with some fine folks as you and Katie, and really interested to hear how you guys got this into English. I'd really love to hear the story. So I'm just here to learn and here to listen.
Seems like a good plan. How are you guys doing? Actually, Katie, how are you doing? Let's talk to you. Brian, I know that you're okay. You're still alive in Georgia. That's enough.
Yep. Yeah.
Katie, how are you?
I'm great. I'm in the mountains of Alicante, and I'm having a glass of wine, and I have a friend visiting, and we're enjoying our summer night.
That sounds romantic and wonderful.
It is really romantic.
I'm just watching the world fall apart in Georgia. So.
Dude, I spend my front porch and have romantic evenings every night. So don't get that.
Well, no, we're not all so lucky, but yeah. I'm very lucky tonight. So
that's super cool. That's super cool. Thank you for coming on here too. I know it's late there. I know it's like a whole different everything, but thank you very much for coming on.
Well, I'm happy to be here, and so is my friend. I swear there is someone here next to me. You're not going to see her at all right there. We rushed the children to bed, we knocked them out, and
this isn't your Canadian girlfriend / boyfriend?
What?
Just like a totally imaginary person.
Canadian?
Yeah, when I was growing up, everyone would be like, "Oh, I have this girlfriend," and they're like, "I've never seen her. She must be like from Canada, right?" You're like, "Oh yeah."
Oh, from home, yeah. She's my friend from home.
From home.
Yeah.
Hey, Margaret. So we're going to be talking about the last part of 4x4 today and everything. And actually, Brian and I have a lot of listener emails.
I'm not surprised.
There's been a ton. There's a lot of. It was a very, very high trafficked season of the 2-month review, in which there were a lot of people writing in, a lot of questions, a lot of things. Do you want to start, Brian? The third part, like I'll summarize because we usually do like the summary. The summary for this part is that it is the philosophical underpinnings of the novel as a whole. It's a very short bit, like it's 11 pages, 13 pages, not very long at all. So like it's a weird one to recap, but at the same time, like this is the core of the novel. This is the bit that's been hidden overall, I guess. It's Garcia Medrano's papers, who was, if you remember, the teacher who went and killed himself, that our substitute Bedragare, that's not his real name, the fake substitute came and replaced, and was told that he killed himself, and these were his leftover papers that sort of were maybe like the beginnings of a story or like something else, and they are very like philosophical statements, allegorical statements on like what the world could be like and what maybe the college is like.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll good. You take it from
I agree.
How would you describe this section? This must have been the hardest section to translate, I assume.
It was, but it was really fun. I mean, because it's, they're really short sections within this short section. And I think what I liked about it was that there's sort of like there's like a dual nature to it. On the one hand, it's very allegorical. You're not really quite sure, is this a real place? Is it really happening somewhere? Is this a real city? Or is this, a stand-in, for what's happening at the college? But on the other hand, it's one of the only places in the book where the real explicit horror of what's going on is kind of laid bare, you know, like you really like, I think there's like a real contrast with the way that she describes the girl in the 4x4 room. And like, you know, the sexual relations like with, you know, these men in power, and the whole process by which this person is sort of like dehumanized. You know, she loses her language. She's like, there's that one part that's so powerful where they talk about how she like gets her first period and doesn't know, you know, what's really going on. And then they talk about how she's, you know, she's losing her language and she's just becoming this like animal, this like beautiful, like menstruating animal. And it's like, you know, the rest of Sarah's like sort of language and plotting is so, it's so, I can't think of the word right now in English, like not amorphous, but it's not like so nitty gritty, you know. And here's this section where it's like, whoa, okay. So on the one hand, there's sort of the philosophical underpinnings, and on the other hand, we get to see sort of the darkness exposed.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I thought that was kind of exciting. When I first read the novel the first time in Spanish, I mean, I really didn't know what was going on at the end. Like, I didn't know if this city was Cardenas. Like, is this Cardenas? Are we in an actual? I thought that was kind of confusing at first. Like, are we in a real place or not? And I don't know if we are, but I have my theories.
Oh, tell us your theories.
Well, they're not good. They're not the theories. They're not as good as the ones that you've warned me that you're going to share tonight.
Not sharing anything, man. Other writers wrote in. I'm just
other people's theories.
Other
people's theories. I mean, I think. My reading of it is that Garcia Medrano was like trying to find a way to describe and express what was happening in the college. I think that the city is the college, and that what he's describing is this process by which, most importantly, like this process of forgetting, right? And like the idea of the people participating, so like the city's inhabitants and the members of the faculty, for example, at the school, how they are all complicit and they participate in perpetuating this system, and they forget how things were before, and they forget how what they're in is constructed and created, and it was constructed and created by people in power, and they just take it now as how things are, and as if it were reality. And there's that part about the building of the wall and how they think the wall is, you know, thousands of years old or centuries old, I forget exactly, but they think this wall is so old. And then she's talking about how they used to they watched it being built, but they watched it being built, and then as soon as it was put up, they just said, oh, that wall's been here forever.
Which is like the college. The college has that same thing. I found that line stood out. There were two lines. I'm going to give away like my favorite lines from this because I listened. Anyone who hasn't paid attention to this podcast up until now, like I listened to the audiobook version of 4x4 for this podcast since you and I had read it a bunch of times, like, and went through it so many times, like an editorial thing. I didn't want to read it anymore. I wanted to like hear it read and see what it's like to like experience it. And there are two lines that really stood out to me, or two bits from this chapter, from this part. And one was that the building of the wall and the building of a consciousness of its antiquity were simultaneous. It's one of the lines, and that's the thing that stood out as like the college they referenced being like, it's supposed to look like it's from World War II, but it's only been there for 15 years. It's fake. That's not real. Also, your galley might not be the same as our finished book because it's
not the same.
We revisited it a lot and changed this section in particular. The other one that really stood out to me that I don't know that we ever spoke about, this is like in the weeds, and anyone who's listening, I apologize in some ways for this, but when we went through this section very carefully the last time, this part never stood out to me. I mean, when I listened to it on the audiobook, it was the first thing that jumped out. Is on page 230 of my edition, of the finished edition, at the second paragraph of the first new section, there are those who take pleasure in seeing it like this. The girl is thin, compliant. The man is slack, covered in veins. A difference of 40 years, perhaps more. Symbols of power, pants down and bunched over his shoes. Cigar in hand, an early sign of victory as he assails her over and over. And I heard that read, and I was like, holy shit.
Yeah, it's awful.
I remember we never paused on that, but like, holy shit.
Yeah. Yep.
It's very direct and very intense.
Yeah. I mean, it is. I mean, that whole section, it starts with the contrast between their skin is gratifying, between bodies and ages. The contrast is sometimes grotesque, but always stimulating. I mean, we're talking about like some real abuse. And yeah. I think, can I just read one more little part? Can I read the thing I highlighted?
Yeah.
But this, I think, because I also think that this is key. And this is the key about the power aspect. And I think that, personally, I think that Sarah, okay, so this is the story she's telling, right? And she chose sex as like the medium, right, for this exchange of power. But it's not the sex and it's not the abuse that's important necessarily, right? It's it's this discussion of those systemic structures, right, that oppress. And I think that this is really critical. This is in the galley, it's 228. There's more space, of course, but it's the confinement to 4x4 that produces pleasure for the one locking and unlocking the door. The pleasure isn't the girl. The pleasure is in controlling the girl's availability. The pleasure is in erasing the girl's notion of a world beyond the dimension of 4x4, in erasing the notion of something other than those brief moments when he's with her and her world expands. The pleasure is in having various girls who think they are the only girl. The pleasure is in making these girls happy with what would make other girls unhappy, changing the rules, the way the world works. And I just want to be like, fuck you to all the men in power who have changed the world, who have changed the way the world works. And I mean, I just feel like that's a rallying cry.
Yeah.
Yeah, that echoes back wonderfully with something that was in the middle of the book where they talked about there's no consequences here, just new rules.
Yeah.
And they keep changing the rules, and how terrifying that would be, where it's not cause and effect, it's just new, like this right. Echo of a new rule and a new rule. You'll never have footing, there's never advancement, there's never change, because it's always
right
shifting or moving, yes. But it's always out of your grasp, and there's no it's a nightmare. Yeah.
To step back from this for 1 second, which we should have done in the beginning, Katie, what's your experience translating Sarah Mesa, and like, what is your relationship? I know we've talked about this. I feel like I sort of skipped by all the general preamble because we've done so many events together that are for this book over the past 2 months. But like, for anyone that's listening to this podcast, like, can you tell, I know that you've told this a few times, but how did you come to Sarah? How did you, like, what is your interest in this book? And how did you feel translating this book as it being your first full-length translation?
Oh, I don't even know if I can go back to May and remember the things I said.
That's fine. I don't remember at all.
I love Sarah's work. I think she's one of the most talented writers working in Spain today. She's very well respected here. She's very well known and successful, but totally stays out of the limelight and doesn't seek it. So I really like that about her. It's like, you know, her work is everywhere, but she's not. And it's cool. She is, she's very sharp. I think the way that she writes very carefully. Her language is like totally distilled, and concise, but it creates this great effect, you know? So like reading it, you know, it was kind of a joy to read because it's easy to read, you know, it's very clear, in the Spanish as well. And so that was I think deceptive. It was sort of deceptively simple. Because then when I went to translate it, keeping that simplicity of language and of syntax and everything, but still creating as interesting an effect as she does, took a lot of work. And I don't know. I hope I did it mostly justice, but I think that was the thing. Like, there was really I kind of think about it as like there was nowhere to hide as a translator. Like, I couldn't, like, if I didn't really understand something.
Finally, she was going on and on for so long. I'm glad this call kicked her off. Finally.
Uh-oh. That's that's a bad,
one of the
bad part.
One of the things I really like to ask her when she comes back, that I really honed in on and really respected about the work was, again, how tight and clean and economical it was.
Yeah.
And there not being much there. There's an elegance and a grace to the way the material is presented, and I thought that juxtaposition works so well with how intense and mysterious the subject matter is, and then being told in such a tight, terse, coiled manner. I think it makes the lines like explosive. And I was imagining if the work of a translator with that must have been like, I would have thought that would have been terrifying. Like she said, there's nowhere to hide, and it has to be so, like, the diction has to be so on point and so precise to carry that over to the next language. I'm wondering how difficult that was.
Yeah, absolutely. And like,
do you know?
I don't want to speak on her behalf, obviously. I don't want to speak on her behalf, obviously, but like, I know from all that she went through with it that it was a series of like revision and continually thinking about like how this sounds and like who's talking and how do they talk and what is the layer of the narrator right now. And that this part, like, this part was wild because like it is so crazy. The third part is like, it is abstracted, it's allegorical, it's like feels like real but not real. It's very like a thing. And the translation, so she read that paragraph, and the paragraph in the finished version is slightly different. And
just slightly,
just slightly. And the reason why was that when I was proofing this, I was on my way to Guadalajara, where the Guadalajara Book Fair, where Katie was. And I was like, I think we need to go through this one more time. I think this section needs like the precision. It needs to be as crisp and clean and spot on as possible. And we spent a good amount of time really refining it at the last minute. And I think we cut out like almost a page to make it that what you're talking about. Because there's a way in which you're translating or editing where you just like add on or let things like drift and be like, well, that explains it. But then there's a way in which you're like, well, if I was writing in English, I wouldn't explain it that way. I would like bring it back very quick. And that's I think what Katie did with the translation for the third part in the last revision, was to make it as tight and as crisp and as like perfected as possible, like what you're saying, Brian.
Yeah, we just pointed out all the mistakes that we found. We got that out of the way.
We pointed out back to how great you were. You missed all the great.
Talk some smack about me while I was gone.
Yeah.
Well, nope. It wouldn't be a 4x4 event with me if my phone didn't die or the internet cut out or. So.
Where's India? Why are you not being chased?
What?
Why are you not being chased by like frozen songs?
I know. Anyway, hopefully this will work. My phone got too hot. That's what it said. It said shut down.
That happened to me actually one time on season 1.
Well, what's interesting is that this never happened until I'm on the phone with Brian Woods. So I don't know.
Oh,
Brian, is it a coincidence or a conspiracy?
She's my quinta. I learned that when she was in town for Alta.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right.
One of the things I really liked.
Sorry,
oh no, totally fine. One of the things I really liked about this too is the way the voice changes in the 3 parts. I thought you guys did a fantastic job capturing teenage angst in a very authentic way while still being literary.
Awesome. Thank you.
In the second part, I thought the unreliable narrator was fantastic with the literary diary style.
Mm-hmm.
And then in the third part, with it being more formal, like it's this person's important work. I really enjoyed the way that you shifted the voice and the narration in each one while still staying. To me, it felt very authentic and readable and clean, like you were saying, very economical.
Yeah, it is.
Was that a challenge trying to shift gears in the different parts?
It was, and because it was my first like full length translation, there were things that I just didn't really know initially. So when I just sort of translated it and did my best, and then it was really at looking at it the first time around with Chad, and then going back over it several times where it was like just changing like a word every once in a while or shifting a sentence. And then you would see that it was really making a big difference. But I think that there were things that I tried to identify within those voices in terms of patterns or ticks or little things that could distinguish the voices. And then going back
Mm-hmm.
through it over and over and trying to really make those come to life, that I think that helped a huge amount in terms of really distinguishing those voices and keeping them as consistent as possible. I mean, that's one of the hardest things I think about translation and maybe writing in general is, keeping the narrative voice consistent without relying on too much sort of those repetitive little hooks or ticks, so that's pretty common. I don't know. I don't even notice it in English, but in Spanish, I seem to notice it a lot, that certain writers, just sort of like their patterns. So we kind of identify what some of those patterns were for the different characters, especially Bedregarde, the substitute, and Celia's voice too, because in part one, you really have two voices. You have Celia's voice in the first person, and then you have the narrator who sometimes narrates from Celia's perspective, but with a different voice, right?
Mm-hmm.
So you have the third person and you have the alternating chapters, first and third person, but even when it's third person, they're shifting perspectives, narrating sort of like from, behind a different characters. So that was really, I learned a lot from that process about the importance of kind of paying close attention to voice in a way that, I hadn't really thought about formally in the first time that I translated it. I sort of, you do things intuitively. And this was a moment where I realized okay, this is actually a skill, going back through and doing that revision. These are things I can do to improve all pieces that I work on.
Man, that you did a fantastic job. I listened to the book. You were on the call when I told you I was listening to it. But really, there's one night where I went out walking and just listened to the second part. It was for last week's podcast, and you and Sarah did a fantastic job on this. This is a really fantastic book, and all the writing is so tight. It's so good. It's so well done. It's very impressive. It's a very impressive thing. And I never get to have that experience. I never get to have the experience of listening to one of our books. You read them, You're editing them. And you say, almost autopilot at times where you're oh, I'm just reading this and intuitively changing things slightly. I feel this better. But there's something about this book that really works so well because it is so crisp and so short and so distinct in its three parts, that listening to it, you get to hear that. You get to see how that all works together. And I think it's really fantastic. I just want to say that you did a great job.
Oh, thank you very much. Well, it was a pleasure. Thanks for giving me the shot.
Of course.
Were there any difficulties working with Chad?
What's that? What? I couldn't hear you. What? Speak up, son. What'd you say?
Sorry, mine's cutting out really bad. I was wondering, were there any difficulties working with Chad through some of the edits that you guys went through?
Difficulties? No. No, it was really easy. He's really easygoing, and everyone who listens to this and everyone who knows Chad knows just what a relaxed and easygoing person he is. So it was really just, piece of cake. No, I mean, actually,
real hard.
No, actually, it was a really good experience, and I thought what was helpful was that you gave a lot of suggestions, Chad, but you let me work things out. Like you at least with this book, it was more like, these are places that I think you need to revisit, but you weren't like, here's my solution in every case, which I thought was helpful. Cause again, like I was able to learn a lot from the process as opposed to just having it kind of straight edited. It was more like, it felt more like a workshop type experience than editing.
Okay.
So
one of the interesting parts that this maybe segues into, I'm going to make this, it's a stretch of a segue, but nevertheless, is on 232 at the bottom where we have the quote from I always fuck this up, from Elias Canetti's book, Crowds in Power.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, Crowds in Power. There's a quote, "The feeling of satisfaction, a kind of sensuousness, produced by having survived can become a dangerous, insatiable passion. It grows stronger every time. The higher the mountain of dead from which a survivor rises, alive, the more intense and tyrannical the need for that experience. The lives of heroes and mercenaries reveal a sort of addiction to it," which isn't a quote from the book. And this is one of those I'm going to throw back to, like, we've talked about this on earlier events we did for this book, but for this podcast, I don't know that we have the same listenership. So do you want to tell the story of how that quote came to be?
Yes. Well, if I remember correctly, I just, it was a quote in Spanish in the original, but it wasn't attributed. I didn't know at first that it was Canetti. And so I just translated. I translated Sarah's rendering of it in Spanish. And or
her quote of the Spanish version
of somebody. Exactly. I translated it from the Spanish. I didn't know what it was. And then when you went through it, we knew it was Canetti by that point. And I think that you tried to find the quote to check the quote. And you couldn't. You're like, well, there's only one translation of this in English from like the 60s. And it doesn't say what you have here. And I'm like, and you're like, did you translate that? I'm like, I don't know. I don't remember. I didn't remember like if I had found it, if I had Googled it and found it or not. But no, I mean, I had translated it, but an English translation did exist, but we weren't totally sold on that English translation. And so, and I think actually, Brian, this goes back to your other question about any difficulties. We went over this so much that by the time it was like, at this point, I'm like, I think I just said, take what I wrote and take what the real quote is and rewrite it. And Chad rewrote that paragraph, splicing the two. We just decided to keep elements of both that we liked.
With one very, very, very specific thing that I think you'll appreciate, Brian, is that in the version that exists in English, so the Canetti book was translated from German into Spanish and into English. And in the Spanish version, it's heroes and mercenaries. In the English version, it's heroes and soldiers. So the whole chapter would have been different if we had gone with the English version, because the quote doesn't reference mercenaries in the English version. But Katie's, because in the Spanish version, it uses the word mercenaries very specifically.
Mercenarios, yeah. I'm right. I mean, I just felt like soldiers was like, blah, compared to mercenaries. It was just not.
Yeah,
mercenaries just has a completely different connotation. Like soldiers just flattened all of that right out. So we couldn't use that.
It really was like, it was one of the moments where, like, when we talked to so many translators on this show and like talk to translators and talk about translation a lot. But this is one of those instances where the interpretation is like key, and you see then that it is everything else. Like, it's not just translating words, but like you could have changed it to soldiers and had a totally different chapter that would have had a totally different resonance with parts 2 and part 1. But because we went with the mercenaries based on your decision, which I completely agree with and think is the best decision, and wanted to be mercenaries as well. But left up to you, like that is a different take, and like it is a take that fits in with the book and fits in with your translation really marvelously. And I think that's important. And I want to pause on it here because I think it's really interesting. I think it's one of those parts of translation that we don't get to talk about specifically outside of certain contexts, and this is one of those.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with that, because I think, and again, I think most translators, everybody would tell you that so much of that it really is intuitive, and it is, you're not conscious of sometimes of how these decisions are made, in your own mind. But I think you're right in terms of the importance of interpretation. And I think, being a very, very careful reader, and not just not like flying through a project, but really spending time as if you were going to be, like writing a review, or deeper than that. If you were going to be like writing let's go back to our English majors, it's like, if you would be writing a paper you should read these papers as if you were writing like a master's dissertation on them, right. Reading these books rather, because, you need to find all of those nuances, because, and really try to understand the text, and all of, its resonances, so that when you go to make an individual decision on a word, what you want to portray. And you don't want, the reader doesn't know, the reader's not aware of that, but the reader will have all those same nuances and connotations in their reading. And so I think you're right. I think the interpretation is really important, and it's important to take the time to really, really understand the works that we're translating. You can't always do that, I think, if you're like churning out projects. But, I'm lucky right now in that I'm doing projects at the start of my career that I really care about, and that I've had to make happen, find publishers for. And they're all projects that, they're books that I read, that I loved, and said, I want to translate this, and then, so that was there from the beginning. So I feel really fortunate with that.
I mean, that is really a trick, it seems, of like having enough work to continue being a translator and having the time to do it in the way that you love.
Yeah.
Is a balance. So we have a bunch of emails that came in about this book.
Mm-hmm.
Like a lot.
Wow.
Lot.
Is that normal? Is that,
famous.
Do you
No.
guys get a lot of TMR mail?
No, we're very
almost never.
Almost never. But this book like sparked like
a lot.
Just an avalanche.
A lot of them were addressed to Katie, oddly enough. Yeah.
I'll start with the. Okay, let's start with this one. Oof. Road Islet to Nowhere wrote, "Is this all Jacob's Ladder? Question mark, question mark, question mark, question mark." Which is a thought that I had. Is this whole book actually Bedragare's dying wish? Like, it's his last moment. He's the only character that we don't see die. Everyone else is dead. Garcia Medrano is dead. Celia's dead. Bedragare we don't see die. Is he actually just like bleeding out, having been killed, and is imagining this entire thing as a Jacob's Ladder in his mind? Katie, you are the authority. Answer: Road Islet to Nowhere.
No, it's not.
It's not.
No.
Can I, Brian, I know you have others. Can I follow up then? So follow up from.
You realize you just spoiled Jacob's Ladder for me. Now, when I go watch it, I'm going to know that he's dead in Vietnam the whole time. Thanks a lot.
Always dies.
Don't tell anybody.
Only person.
Jeez. Me and my 5-year-old have that for movie night tomorrow night. We're going to watch Jacob's Ladder, and then follow that up with Exorcist 2.
Oh my gosh.
Forget it. I'll just watch Moana now. Thanks a lot.
Just watch.
Moana has some great music. Moana has a great score.
For some reason, I thought you said The Wall by Pink Floyd has some great music, and I was like, if you're watching The Wall,
Moana.
You guys are both crazy.
Yeah, that fits.
That would also work. That should be the music for that. But
can I tell you?
Related to that. Go on.
Okay.
Sorry.
No, go ahead. No,
you go ahead.
I've spoken enough.
I have another question.
Okay.
AJ Zona says, long time, first time. Enjoyed the last podcast with Lissy last week, but you, Chad, fucked up the question about Cayetana. Clearly, the Mastiff is the spear from the prisoner, keeping everyone in. She obviously eats Luke's because dogs eat cats. And then Ledesma tries to escape. She is forced, like the prisoner, to keep him in because men deserve to have their dicks eaten off. Am I right? I'm totally right. I'll hang up and listen. Which I'm not sure how any of that works, but like, okay, AJ Zona. The murderer of Luke's and Ledesma.
Okay. Oh wait, am I meant to answer?
Yes. This is a question for you, Katie.
No.
Why not?
Just answer no.
No. I like, oh, the answer just no.
Because I think, yeah, my answer's no, just to all of this. No. I think that Cayetana, my read on Cayetana is that she is a gentle soul. I don't think she would do any of those things.
Do you know, have you guys seen The Prisoner?
No.
Do you know what that reference is?
The TV show?
Yeah, the TV show.
Yeah, I know what that is.
So you know the big, okay, so Katie, for your benefit and for anyone who's listening who doesn't know, there's a giant like bubble. So the prisoner is this guy that's like, he's an MI5 agent who like does something and is in a prison, but it's not really a prison. He's referred to as number 6 constantly. He's number 6, I believe. Someone's gonna correct me in a second. But number 6, and they keep referring to him as and he's like, I'm not a number, I'm a person. And he tries to escape this prison, this town that's like this idyllic town, the good place town. It's the good place town. But every time you get too far out, there's a giant bubble that like this sphere that floats on things and like assaults him, and he ends up back in the place and it's like, fuck, I didn't make it. And it's like one of the most important shows from the 1960s. And I do think Cayetana functions as that element. I would agree with AJ Zona on this, that Cayetana is like a sphere that keeps people in. Like no one ever goes outside of the boundaries without her being there.
Huh.
Maybe. It does kind of go with in that beginning when they're trying to escape, and it's almost like, what's the point? They're just going to bring us back. Whatever we do is pointless, and we end up right back into this.
Cayetana will come get you, man.
There's no escape.
She'll be there.
Yeah.
All right,
I can see that.
What is your
answer?
Who killed everyone? Who killed Luke's and who killed Ledesma? Are they the same person? Or
I don't know.
Animal?
I don't think it's an animal.
I'm just gonna put out here that I don't trust dogs, so I'm willing to believe.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's a werewolf.
I don't know. I don't know. I don't know if Sarah knows who killed them, but I think like obviously the most direct read would be it would be at the headmaster's bidding.
Although
And maybe it's his Harasim, his servant that comforts him so. But it could be I don't know. What do you think?
last week I put forth a theory which people glommed onto, was that Bedragare did it. And that there's so many gaps in his narrative where he talks about like the second that things happen that are violent, he's always like, I dreamed about cocaine and like things. I don't remember anything. I can't write things. And he's like, and Luke's head is on a spike. And I'm like, that's crazy. And he's like, and then I had this other, and he has a very direct quote where he's like, Ledesma's going to find out how bad it was. What's going to happen to him is going to be so bad for what he said. And he'll learn that lesson. And it's like this crazy moment where I was like, whoa, I could buy into this as him being the most unreliable narrator and being the person who murdered them, because he hates Luke's because he hates the assistant headmaster because he's boning Marietta.
Marietta.
Yeah. And then like Ledesma's like, I'm going to expose everything. And he's like, no,
Yeah.
you're not going to expose shit. I'm going to keep this in check. And he has these like, oh, I don't remember things moments that are really intense. And they surround those two killings was the theory from last week.
Well, wait a second. And I might be off on the timing, but also, so when like, he's like really unstable and really losing his shit when Ledesma's missing. And there's that whole scene where he is, when he goes to like check on Ledesma's car and Marietta comes out and then he like has the primal scream and she just goes running away. Like he's really losing it. And then at like
on January 8th.
Like, yeah. Okay. And then at like the school assembly, like when the detective is there and he's just like laughing and like falling apart. So yeah, I mean, I could buy that too. I would buy that. I mean, he's an awful guy. He really is. Like I don't know that he's presented as a killer, but he is definitely presented as a dick, and he's self-absorbed. And
it feels like a red herring.
Yeah. In
some ways, because it's almost so obvious. Oh, I'm the new person in town with the new identity and secrets, and I can't remember everything. And now there's murders happening. Oh, yeah. It also has that like that classic red herring.
Yeah.
Feeling where we'll switch it up on you at the end once, but.
And maybe he doesn't even know
that way.
Yeah.
Maybe he doesn't even know that he's killed them. Like he's really like losing his mind.
Yes. That was my theory last week, was that he doesn't remember. He doesn't know. Yeah. That he can. So the theory that I don't remember if I articulated this last week or not. I was trying to save it for you, Katie, is that he is infected. That he reads Garcia Medrano's papers before any of these killings happen. He reads them and then he gets sick. And that those papers are the infection. And that they are the conduit to understanding what the nature of the evil is of the entire place. And that he becomes complicit with it and isn't aware of what he's doing anymore because he's ill. And that his illness metaphor is that he's been transformed into that person that continues the process of this sort of hierarchy of needs and of like of repression.
Yeah. Right, because he wakes up and is like immediately wants to, bone the housekeeper. The old,
He's not old. Watch
no,
her.
she. No, I know the way that he describes her though. When he's like,
You're too old
she doesn't like how she looks. And he's like, she doesn't like how she looks, and I don't want to give her too many compliments because they won't sound sincere. It's like he's an asshole.
That's where we talked last week about the part. He's like, well, you're not too old to have kids. You're just too old, kinda.
We could try. God.
Do you have any?
Yeah, he's. I'm sorry, you cut out. I on my side. What did you say? Do I have any what?
Do you have any emails that you want to read?
I can't because they're on my phone, and none of my computers can run this StreamYard thing because they're too old, and my phone is the only way to do it.
So I have one more that's for you, I think.
Oh, that's
no, I have two more. This one I think is for you though. It's COVID and Peaches. COVID and Peaches. Man, I don't know what the fuck these people are doing. I think I'm living inside this book. My apartment isn't even 144 square feet. I only see my roommates when they bring me food or ask me to give them money in exchange for services like heat, water. I didn't get the beginning and think the book should be more realistic like it is in part 3 and set in Brooklyn or Atlanta. Also, Brian, hit me up. I'm at 404-585-9232, which I guess that's for you.
Huh. Is that Will's number, hopefully?
I don't think so.
Oh, no.
That's COVID and Peaches, man. Gotta get that COVID and Peaches.
COVID and Peaches.
Also,
all right.
Mail. We got a hate mail from Spuds, Ohio. It says, why do you keep making fun of Ohio, you pieces of shit? Fuck you, MAGA, MAGA, MAGA. Hashtag Trump 2020. Your podcast sucks ass. Every theory you have is the same as eating ass. I don't know what
that sounds about right.
Seems
that's pretty good for Ohio. Not bad.
They actually spelled all the words right. So Spuds,
Yeah.
Ohio, fuck you. And also like, fuck your state, but thank you for spelling your words right. So did you write a jacket copy for this one?
I did not actually. Maybe we could do that for the. Do you still do the blog or no?
Yeah, I mean, no, but yes, sure.
Okay, I thought we could do a blog post with some alternative jacket copy for 4x4, which I still don't understand. Why is it called 4x4? There's no cars, hardly any cars in this whole book. So I think that's really misleading. You can tell Sarah that's what America thinks of 4x4, by the way.
I think she gave up on us.
Oh, we lost her. That joke just. That joke's not going to work now. Dang it.
No, thank you, guys. So I did.
It was a dad joke, anyways.
So I did write jacket copy for this using your scheme.
The template, yes.
Oh no, you got one
for new listeners.
Like 40 from fucking Caden. Fuck that guy. Caden Little. Caden Little, the guy that we bought.
Oh yeah, he's the worst.
On. Dick. Fuck that guy. I thought I wrote email. I thought I wrote a jacket copy for this using our template.
Yes. So one of the fun things we like to do with some of the books is there's this awful template I found of one of those Writer's Digest books where it's teaching you your own jacket copy, and it's blank. It's basically Mad Libs, and they're being serious about it, where it's like blank is a blank who is blank. So it's your protagonist, their occupation, and then what is the quagmire that they're in, right? Or the situation that they're in, I think is how it starts. And then the second paragraph has to begin with, but suddenly, or I'm trying to remember off the top of my head.
I got it right
when. Okay, perfect.
Okay, I've got this shit lined up. So this craft book has like a template in which you read, in which you insert things into a Mad Lib. Blank is a blank who blank. Write one or two more sentences describing the character's background and current world. Paragraph 2 start with suddenly or but. Fill in a major turning point. But his world turned upside down when blah, blah, blah. Paragraph 3 start with now and make it an action sentence like now blank must struggle with blank, or use a question like will blank be able to blank, or will she blank and will blank? Add a final sentence that is quote unquote pure marketing. So here's what I came up with. Celia is a student who kills herself. Full stop. Suddenly, she's the focal point of Rivani College, which needs to maintain its reputation by covering up this incident. But when a fake substitute arrives, the mystery surrounding her disappearance augurs the downfall of the school as a whole. Now, when girls are in 4x4 boxes and mercenaries rule the world, who will save humanity? 4x4 is like Westworld pre-revolution.
That's great. I think
yeah.
that when the second edition comes out, you should rewrite the jacket copy.
Yeah, for sure.
When the current stock sells out. Let's
yeah, for sure. Yeah, obviously. Just plant that on the back. Nobody will know.
Slap it on there.
Totally
That's
the
good.
best jacket copy ever. Anyway,
yeah, my idea for it was
we weren't supposed to do that, right? I wasn't supposed to.
Brian was supposed to do it.
Oh, Brian was.
Yeah, no, I failed. I was going to do one for the cat, for Lux. Lux is a Persian kitty on his way to school, given as a gift to Celia, who doesn't really want him. But when the students want to play a gag on him, his world is turned upside down. Will Lux lose his head, or can he keep his kitty cools and make his way through college? Lux
Wow.
goes to school in 4x4.
Wow. Sold.
I'll read that one. Yeah.
Sold.
they're so, these are, yeah.
I don't know why this is even a joke. What this
Can't
is
go
like,
wrong
this,
with the book
this seems,
template.
This seems to work really well. Why is it so funny?
Yeah.
I don't get it.
So Katie, okay, let's transition here because it's near the end of our hour. Let's use this then. And what is your next book that's coming out? I think you should use World's Best Mother as your next book that's coming out, even if that's not true. Your next book coming out is World's Best Mother, which is what?
Wait, do I have to do the? I have to tell it.
You'll get there. Tell us first what it is, and then I'll walk you through this.
Oh, God, I don't like this. I don't like this type of thing. I don't like games. So, well, World's Best Mother is a novel about a writer who is writing about being a mother, being a mother and being an artist, being a mother and being a creator. And are those two things mutually exclusive? And let's see what happens in there. Lots of stuff.
Oh, wait, you don't need no. You can just make a normal, just present it normally right now. This is a great book.
That was normal.
Yeah, that's totally normal. You don't have to do anything more than that. It's a great book. I've read it. It's fantastic. It's coming from World Editions, and the author is
Nuria Labari. It's
and
really good. It's really funny. I mean, parts of it are so funny and parts of it are so moving. And if you're a parent, a father or a mother, I mean, you'll read it and just say yes, especially if you're a creative.
If you're someone who liked the Ducks Newburyport book and or podcast about that book, you will love this. It's really good. It's a very sharp, it's not the same as that. It's not fiction in that way. It's a different sort of thing, but you'll appreciate it. It's a really smart book. So the way that you have to make this terrible jacket copy is blank is a blank who blanks.
Okay. She doesn't have a name, the protagonist. The protagonist is a mother who writes.
Okay. One or two more sentences describing the character's background and current world. She's a mother with 2 kids.
She's a mother who writes, and she's a writer who's a mother. And
got it. Okay. Then suddenly when blank happens.
And this is when the record scratch happens on the trailer. But
guys, I don't know. I'm no good at this kind of thing.
I know. Don't worry about it. We'll just let it go.
Let it go. I'm going to tell you something. When I was young and I had to do things like, be on a team and make up a cheer and those are traumatic memories. This is triggering.
That's okay. Okay. So the protagonist is a writer who is also a mother. I'll do it for you. The protagonist is a writer who is also a mother. Paragraph 2. Suddenly, she realizes that being a mother and being a creative are at odds with each other. Now she has to struggle with what that means for the rest of her life. What will she do? Will she be able to figure out how to be a good parent and a good writer? World's Best Mother is a riveting novel about being mother in the middle of the 21st century. Question mark.
I don't know, Chad. That was a really good effort, but if that doesn't entice you, listeners, give it another shot. Wait till June 2021.
I would do it on the title. I love the title. I think knowing that it's going to be funny.
It is funny. Yeah.
That sounds like a wonderful title. So
yeah,
I'm looking forward to that.
Mother. And it's funny.
Okay,
and actually,
cool.
What was funny too is in Spanish, it's la mejor madre del mundo. So that could be, the best mother. Literally, that's the best mother in the world. But I always just thought of it
like a mug.
World's best mother. But then when I was when it got picked up, there was some discussion on the title of like world's best mother or best mother in the world. And I'm like, it has to be world's best mother. Like, can't be best mother in the world. No, world's best mother. Get the prize. That was really fun to translate.
Are they going to make coffee mugs for it to promote it?
Yeah, there's a million coffee mugs like that already in existence. We just have to get them in the dollar store.
Put the book cover on the back.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
I'll buy one of those.
Okay. Well, I'll get one made for you. I'll get one made for you just in case it's not a marketing route they want to take. We'll just make sure that we get at least one for you. World's best mother.
Okay.
Best mother in the world, Chad.
Okay. Quite okay. Worst father in the world. My face.
Brian, I have a question. I have a question for Brian. Are you writing? Are you doing much writing now? Now that your book is out.
Not a ton. Not as much as I want to, but yeah, I'm working on a novel in about 68 pages, 67, awesome. 68 pages into it. I think it'll probably be about 70 pages long. I'm about done with it. So
you're excellent.
It'll be my short novel. Yeah, so I'm about a third of the way through. So
good.
Yeah.
Good.
Should be coming out in 2029.
2029. Awesome. That's going to be a great year.
I'm slow.
It's going to be a really good year. It's much better than this year. Yeah. Yeah. It's going to be a very good year.
Anyone have a favorite line they want to share?
Yes, I'm sure. Wait, from part 3, right?
It doesn't matter for you. You can do whatever you want.
I don't want to go yet. I haven't chosen. Does anyone else do you have one?
I have one queued up I can do if you want while you're
while I'm looking.
Thumbing through. I was actually, when I was, this is from the third part on page 236. And I think it links up really well when thinking about when we first get introduced to Lux the cat on page 29. So kind of in conversation with that section about Lux, I'll let the viewers read that later. But it talks about getting a gift, even if you don't want it, and what you're supposed to do with it. So this is the part where it says on page 236, once the man gave the girl a plant in a flower pot. In those days, the girl was still young and unused. She was in her 4x4 incubator, being prepared for a promising future she naturally couldn't grasp at the time. Through gestures, the man explained that she had to water the plant to keep it alive. The man didn't use words with the girl. He wanted her to forget the ones she knew so that the process of forgetting would be less traumatic. The man loved the girl. The proof was in the plant. The girl felt this, and she did everything she could to take care of it, but the plant died nevertheless. And you can go on and finish that section, but I really like the way this one can be in conversation with Lux the cat being given to Celia in the first part.
Yes.
It's really, really powerful, really beautiful, really simple, and really, really scary the way this is presented. That's just so powerful and so wonderful. It's a testament to the great work you folks did with this book. So kudos to all of you.
Thank you. I mean, I love that too, Brian. I think that's a great one to choose. And I think, I think personally, like this speaks to a part of Sarah's writing that is like, there's sort of like a strange, in some moments, not so often in this early novel, but in some of her later works, like even when they're sort of like strange or kind of like, dark or unpleasant at times, like they're like, this is, I think, like a little foreshadowing of some of like the strange like tenderness in some of her writing as well. Like she's describing people and situations that are sometimes, like really liminal, or really dark. But then something like this will happen, and it's like, you're thinking about this young woman, and like, the man loved the girl. The proof was in the plant. I mean, it just gives me the shivers. Like, it's really good. Sarah's really, really good. So,
and again, like the power of a word in there, like incubator.
Yeah.
I mean,
right.
That's Oh
I
yeah,
know.
it's just
Yeah.
it's
Yeah. Well, actually,
amazing stuff.
That whole being prepared for a promising future she naturally couldn't grasp at the time. Yeah, that's really good. That's great.
I'm gonna go take a shower now.
Do it for
Yeah.
your favorite line.
I know. Okay, I'm actually going to read something. I want to read the last section. Wait, Brian, you speak French, don't you? Why do I think
No.
that? Why do I think that?
Oh, I'm just
Do you speak
a
French?
man of the world, obviously.
I thought first. I don't know why I thought that. Chad, do you read French?
Was it because I ordered French fries when we ordered French fries at that pub? Is that why?
Maybe that's why.
I called them
was
pump. Yeah, that's why.
Pump
Of course.
You go to Freedom Fries. Freedom Fries.
Well, okay. Well, I can't read. I'm certainly not gonna read it in French. But it's the last section, and this is from a poem. This is from a poem by, oh my God, I'll forget his name. It's a poem. Oh yeah, Alfred
girl.
Vincent.
Yeah.
Okay. So it's the poem, blah, blah, blah. And we find that the poem is where that word robinette is coming from, that the girl is one of the only words the girl remembers. And she remembers it from school. So they must, obviously that she must have memorized this poem as a schoolgirl. Of the poem, only the word robinette. And actually, you know what? I'm going to stop. I'm reading from the galley, and it might be different from the final version, but I'm not sure. So, of the poem, only the word robinette remains. The rest is already dead. There is no naiad, no bathtub or fugitive water. There is no love or longing. The poem is hollow, a succession of sounds without meaning, just as the ululation of the screech owl is nothing more than a lost cry. In this story, a perfect silence now reigns. And I think that's a great ending.
My line was, in the story, a perfect silence now reigns. I've been holding it open the whole time, waiting for you guys.
Sorry, stole it. But yeah, I mean, it's a great ending. It's a really good ending.
It really is.
Yeah.
Thank you. What's next? What's next for Sarah?
In Spanish.
What's next for you, and what's next for Sarah and you?
Okay. Well, Sarah has a new novel coming out in the fall from Anagrama. It's called Un Amor. And any news you want to share about that?
Yeah, we have the rights to it, and you're going to translate it.
Yes. Okay. I just didn't know if I could say. Yeah. So I'm going to translate that, which is really exciting. And
but before that,
Mala Letra, Bad Handwriting, is her collection of short stories, which I love. Like I came to her work through the short stories, and I have like a very serious soft spot for them. So I can't wait to do those. I'm really excited about that. And Un Amor, I'm really pumped about too. I've read her drafts of that. She sent me the draft this winter, and we had a wonderful conversation about it. It was really exciting to talk about, and I'm so glad that you guys got the rights and are going to be doing it. It's great. And then Carta de Pan and Megan McDowell's translation is coming out next. Is that the spring? Coming spring?
May.
So that's great. And yeah, so, and then, Sarah has some other earlier work that, I'm sure I'll be trying to get you to
I would love to do those earlier books for sure. Obviously. Just we get caught up.
One of the early, so the novel that came just before 4x4, An Invisible Fire, was published, I forget, by another press. I think it was her first novel that was published, and then Anagrama re-edited it and republished it. And that's like a companion piece to 4x4.
Yeah.
That's the story of Vado, the city that's like abandoned. So we find out we kind of find out like what is going on in the world and in the cities that leads to the 4x4 world. So I think that would be really cool.
We definitely want to do that. We definitely want to have you translate it. Thank you, Katie.
Thank you. Thanks, guys. Thanks for reading carefully and for doing this book.
Congratulations.
It's great.
Also, congratulations on having your first book come out. Like,
Thank you.
good job.
Thanks.
Great job.
Thank you very much.
Next week, we're going to move on to the Book of Anna by Carmen Bellosa, translated from the Spanish by Samantha Schnee. And I think we're doing the first 70-ish, 79 pages. It's something weird. I've been listening to Anna Karenina obsessively in Maggie Gyllenhaal's reading of it. So I will be able to fill that in. Brian, have you read Anna Karenina?
No, I got the Kathleen Turner audiobook. It's really gravelly.
Yeah, that seems about right.
Maybe I'll try the Maggie Gyllenhaal one.
Maggie's great. She doesn't know how to pronounce adroitly at all. Like, she just doesn't get it. Like, it's not a word that's ever existed in English for her. But that's cool.
I mean,
but
here's the question: like, is it pronounced adroitly? I mean, that's how I say it.
Adrolet?
Am I wrong?
You say adrolet?
Adrolet. No.
Well, I'm French. I could tell you how to.
Brian speaks French, so he can help you.
Oh my God. Where can people find you guys online? Plug yourselves one more time and I'll let everyone go.
I have Instagram and it's private and it's mostly pictures of my kids.
Never mind.
And that's it.
Hey, if you want
to see Katie's kids, go stalk her.
I want to see some great pictures of my kids and family life. I don't like the Twitter, but I don't know. So no one can find me on anything. Sorry.
It's for the best.
Brian, you got anything?
Yeah, I'm at Brian Wood _. Come at me with your hot takes because boy, is my Twitter is super saucy. So
I mean, anything
I'm the most boring.
People that wrote into us, write to us. Fuck you too. Don't write to us anymore. Any of you, none of you ever write to us.
Enough letters, enough fan mail. All right.
Fuck that fan mail forever. Never write to us.
Just go back to not watching, everybody.